Lecture 9, Segment 2. Welcome back. We're staying within the experiential resource of the clause. The general topic is the construal of experience, with a focus on one of the key systems of transitivity, the system of process type. So we're in the blue square in our schematic function rank matrix. Experiential column, clause, row. The system of transitivity, and within that, the system of process type. We're concerned with the construal of experience into distinct domains of flux or goings on in our experience of flow events. And process type sort these into different models of participation. Let me quote from Halliday and Matheson 2014, Halliday's Introduction to Functional Grammar. What are the different types of process as construed by the transitivity system in the grammar? The picture we derive from English is something like this. There is a basic difference that we become aware of at a very early age, 3 to 4 months, between inner and outer experience, between what we experience as going on out there in the world around us and what we experience as going on inside ourselves in the world of consciousness. And this includes perception, emotion, imagination, desire, and so on. The prototypical form of the outer experience is that of actions and events. Things happen and people or other actors do things or make them happen. So in contrast, the inner experience is harder to sort out. But it's partly a kind of replay of the outer, recording it, reacting to it, reflecting on it, and partly a separate awareness of our states of being. The grammar sets up a discontinuity between these two. It distinguishes rather clearly between outer experience, the process of the external world, and inner experience, the process of consciousness. The grammatical categories are those of material clauses and mental clauses, as illustrated by I'm having a shower, material, and I don't want a shower, mental. For instance, you produce so much money is a material clause, construing the outer experience of the creation of a commodity. But I was fascinated by it is a mental one, construing the inner experience of an emotion, fascination. Or to construct a contrastive pair, the machine is producing, sorting, destroying money, material, whereas people love, hate, want, desire, money is mental. So let's explore this basic distinction grammatically in the system of process type, material versus mental clauses. Inner experience, process of sensing, are represented by mental clauses, and outer experience, process of doing and happening, actions, activities, events, represented by material clauses. Let's start with material. Our experience of doings and happenings, actions, activities, and events in the world around us, outer experience, is constructed grammatically by material clauses. And let's return to the exploration of comics as a source of illustration. In comics, such experiences can be represented entirely by a drawing within a panel, possibly with the addition of sound effects. In other words, you don't need language to construe the outer experience of doings and happenings. For example, and again I turn to Hergé's Tintin for illustration. So people shooting at one another, for example, can be represented entirely pictorially by the image in the panel. And comparing the previous segment, the discussion of the experience of Shaney shooting his hunting teammate, as in Cheney Bag's lawyer. Or that could be represented by a drawing. In contrast, our experience of sensing, of perceiving, thinking, wanting in the world of inside us, our inner experience, our sense of consciousness, is construed by mental clauses. So let me add them to the diagram, and I'll represent them as the inner part of the diagram. So mental clauses representing sensing, our inner experience, perceiving, thinking, wanting, feeling. And again, if we think about comics, how does this get represented in comics? Well, the content of sensing, that can't be drawn. That has to be represented by means of language. So in comics, there's evolved the convention of representing the content of sensing in thought clouds, like this. So in a panel in a comic, you can draw a sensor, a person involved in the process of sensing. But the content of sensing, the content of consciousness, the ideas that are brought into existence by sensing have to be represented by language separately in a thought cloud. Mental clauses construe the sensing or conscious processing of a conscious being, prototypically human, and they may project into existence the content of sensing, the idea created by the conscious processing. So in this panel, for example, you have an antagonist, one of Tinder's antagonists, is thinking. And you can represent the sensor, and through the facial expression, drawing of the facial expression, suggest some kind of sensing. But the content of sensing, the ideas being brought into existence by the sensing, have to be represented by language. That's what this antagonistic character thinks. Everybody, just a minute, isn't someone missing? His ideas, the content of consciousness, gets represented within a partition in the panel, a thought cloud. Thus, in comics, process of consciousness are represented pictorially, sensor plus process of sensing, and linguistically, the idea projected in a special partition in the panel, a thought cloud, which is separate from the material reality being represented pictorially. Now notice that this partition in the panel, the thought cloud, is separate from the material reality being represented pictorially. This means that comics, the conventions of the comics, reflect a very deep principle in the grammar of experience. The separation of the outer experience and the inner experience, the experience that is brought into existence through process of sensing. Now we can play with this, or rather comic artists can play with this. And one who's done this in a number of drawings is Michael Leunig, a celebrated Australian artist. Here's one example. This is entirely pictorial, but you see a man sitting in a boat, a dinghy, and thinking, creating a thought cloud. But Leunig transgresses here. He represents this thought cloud, which is a higher order of reality, what is brought into existence by consciousness, as if it were a material object, one that could weigh down the other end of the boat. So when you consider these pictorial jokes, you get a sense of the significance of the difference between the reality, the material reality depicted in the panels, so showed in the image, and the reality brought into existence and separated out in partitions we call thought clouds. Well, this is Michael Leunig. Here's another example. Cocktail party, two people talking. A man produces some talk So this is now a speech balloon, not a thought cloud. But Luning is having fun with this. We'll come to speaking a bit later. Luning is having fun with this, and he represented as if it was part of that reality in which the two people are chatting, rather than the content of what he's saying. And you have this little figure hanging down from the speech balloon. And that brought into the tension between the projection of the higher order reality of thinking or speaking versus the material reality, the outer experience, the experience of what's outside us. Here's another Luning example. Here's a poor man by the wayside with a bottle in his mouth, drinking, probably quite drunk, and he's thinking something. Now, interesting here, Luning has represented, unusually, the content of thinking by picture, and that's him with his happy family of children. But then again, you have this joke, the tension between the projected higher order reality of thinking versus the external reality, the material world. And you see the sign next to this man, dreams will be towed away. And in fact, his dreams are being towed away. Now that's figurative, of course, but again, you have a tension between these different orders of reality. And this, these meanings were created by Michael Luning. If you're interested in the celebrated Australian artist, cartoonist, you can Google him. You can read about him in the Wikipedia. He's now in his mid-70s. Now, let me give you one text example where mental clauses play a significant role. I've used as a way in the way they're represented in comics, precisely because the content of consciousness is on the whole difficult to depict. I mean, you can try, you can have examples, but in general it gets represented by language. Language being the information brought into existence by the sensing, the knowledge, if you will. But even if we read or listen to text that are in principle constructed entirely linguistically, entirely verbally, we see that mental clauses play a significant role. And one role that they play is that they enable speakers, singers, writers to represent the inner workings of people's minds, as it were. And one example of this is a song by the Beatles, Yesterday. Now, yesterday is a reflection on yesterday. It's a good example also for marked temporal themes. But what I'm concerned with is here, listening to the mental clauses. So the lyrics include, "Oh, I believe in yesterday. I don't know." And "I don't know" that projects an idea into consciousness. Why she had to go. "I long for yesterday." That's again a representation of Paul McCartney's consciousness. I mean, Paul McCartney as a performer. "I long for yesterday." It's a different kind of sensing, desire. The other ones are cognition. "I believe, I don't know." "I believe in yesterday. I don't know why she had to go. Now I long for yesterday." And you recognize "I don't know" plus a proposition from our discussion of modality. So this is a crossover point between the interpersonal and the experiential, or more generally the ideational. I believe in yesterday. So rounding off this introduction to another process type, that of mental clauses, have a listen to the song Yesterday and listen for the mental clauses. I hope this wistful song won't make you feel melancholic, but it is, among other things, a good illustration of the contribution that mental clauses make to meditation, to reflection, As I said, they allow speakers to represent the consciousness of themselves or of other people. And this, of course, can be quite important in stories and narratives, where they allow the writer or the storyteller to peer into the consciousness of different characters. What they see, what they hear, what they think, what they believe, what they want, they desire, and so on. Next segment, 9.3, will continue proposals type. So thank you. Have a rest now.